أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Shall we start our daily Ramadan program? We'll start with the recitation of the 7th juz of the Holy Quran. Prior to starting, inshallah, let's recognize the sponsors for tonight's program, Dr. Asad and Dr. Amna Sadiq, Dr. and Mrs. Aziz Sadiq, Dr. and Mrs. Zaki Sadiq. Please recite Surah Fatiha for their marhumin as well as your own marhumin. Surah Fatiha. Also, a quick announcement, inshallah, you've seen in the email, family trivia game of Kahoot, inshallah, will take place this coming Saturday, April 24th at 10 p.m. Please register so that you can take part in this family fun event. Okay, let me share my screen. So for the recitation, I would request Rayan to start us off. Bismillah, Rayan.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وإذا سمعوا ما أنزل إلى الرسول ترى أعينهم تفيض من الدمع مما عرفوا من الحق يقولون ربنا آمنا فاكتبنا مع الشاهدين وما لنا لا نؤمن بالله وما جاءنا من الحق ونطمع أن يدخلنا ربنا مع القوم الصالحين فأثابهم الله بما قالوا جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها وذلك جزاء المحسنين والذين كفروا وكذبوا بآياتنا أولئك أصحاب الجحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تحرموا طيبات ما أحل الله لكم ولا تعتدوا إن الله لا يحب المعتدين وكلوا مما رزقكم الله حلالا طيبا واتقوا الله الذي أنتم به مؤمنون لا يؤاخذكم الله باللغو في أيمانكم ولكن يؤاخذكم بما عقدتم الأيمان فكفارته إطعام 10 مساكين من أوسط ما تطعمون أهليكم أو كسوتهم أو تحرير رقبة فمن لم يجد فصيام 3 أيام ذلك كفارة أيمانكم إذا حلفتم واحفظوا أيمانكم كذلك يبين الله لكم آياته لعلكم تشكرون يا أيها الذين آمنوا إنما الخمر والميسر والأنصاب والأزلام رجس من عمل الشيطان فاجتنبوه لعلكم تفلحون إنما يريد الشيطان أن يوقع بينكم العداوة والبغضاء في الخمر والميسر ويصدكم عن ذكر الله وعن الصلاة فهل أنتم منتهون وأطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول واحذروا فإن توليتم فاعلموا أنما على رسولنا البلاغ المبين ليس على الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات جناح فيما طعموا إذا ما اتقوا وآمنوا وعملوا الصالحات ثم اتقوا وآمنوا ثم اتقوا وأحسنوا والله يحب المحسنين. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
بسم الله.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا ليبلونكم الله بشيء من الصيد تناله أيديكم ورماحكم ليعلم الله من يخافه بالغيب فمن اعتدى بعد ذلك فله عذاب أليم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تقتلوا الصيد وأنتم حرم ومن قتله منكم متعمدا فجزاء مثل ما قتل من النعم ويحكم به ذوى عدل منكم هديا بالغ الكعبة أو كفارة طعام مساكين أو عدل ذلك صياما ليذوقه وبال أمره عفى الله عما سلف ومن عاد فينتقم الله منه والله عزيز ذو انتقام. أحل لكم صيد البحر وطعامه متاعا لكم ولسيارة وحرم عليكم صيد البر ما دمتم حرما واتقوا الله الذي إليه تحشرون. جعل الله الكعبة البيت الحرام فيما للناس والشهر الحرام والهدي والقلائد ذلك لتعلموا أن الله يعلم ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وأن الله بكل شيء عليم. اعلموا أن الله شديد العقاب وأن الله غفور رحيم. ما على الرسول إلا البلاغ والله يعلم ما تبدون وما تكتمون. قل لا يستوي الخبيث والطيب ولو أعجبك كثرة الخبيث فاتقوا الله يا أولي الألباب لعلكم تفلحون. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
You can read one more.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تسألوا عن أشياء إن تبد لكم تسوكم وإن تسألوا عنها حين ينزل القرآن تبد لكم عفى الله عنها والله غفور حليم. قد سألها قوم من قبلكم ثم أصبحوا بها كافرين. ما جعل الله من بحيرة ولا سائبة ولا وسيلة ولا حام ولكن الذين كفروا يفترون على الله الكذب وأكثرهم لا يعقلون. وإذا قيل لهم تعالوا إلى ما أنزل الله وإلى الرسول قالوا حسبنا ما وجدنا عليه آباءنا وأولو كان آباؤهم لا يعلمون شيئا ولا يهتدون يا أيها الذين آمنوا عليكم وأنفسكم لا يضركم من ضل إذا اهتديتم إلى الله مرجعكم جميعا فينبئكم بما كنتم تعملون يا أيها الذين آمنوا شهادة بينكم إذا حضر أحدكم الموت حين الوصية اثنان ذوى عدل منكم أو آخران من غيركم إن أنتم ضربتم في الأرض فأصابتكم مصيبة الموت تحبسونهما من بعد الصلاة ويقسمان بالله إن ارتبتم لا نشتري به ثمنا ولو كان ذا قربى ولا نكتم شهادة الله إنا إذا لمن الآثمين فإن عثر على أنهما استحقا إثما فآخران يقومان مقامهما من الذين استحق عليهم الأوليان فيقسمان بالله لشهادتنا أحق من شهادتهما ولا اعتدينا إنا إذا لمن الظالمين ذلك أدنى أن يأتوا بالشهادة على وجهها أو يخافون أن ترد أيمان بعد أيمانهم واتقوا الله واسمعوا والله لا يهدي القوم الفاسقين صدق الله العلي العظيم.
أحسنت جزاكم الله. بسم الله. شباب भाई.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يوم جمع الله الرسل فيقول ماذا أجبتم قالوا لا علم لنا إنك أنت علام الغيوب إذ قال الله يا عيسى ابن مريم اذكر نعمتي عليك وعلى والدتك إذ أيدتك بروح القدس تكلم الناس في المهد وكهلا وإذ علمتك الكتاب والحكمة والتوراة والإنجيل وإذ تخلق من الطين كهيئات الطير بإذني فتنفخ فيها فتكون طير بإذني وتبرئ الأكمه والأبرص بإذني وإذ تخرج الموتى بإذني وإذ كففت بني إسرائيل عنك إذ جئتهم بالبينات فقال الذين كفروا منهم إن هذا إلا سحر مبين وإذ أوحيت إلى الحواريين أن آمنوا بي وبرسولي قالوا آمنا واشهد بأننا مسلمون إذ قال الحواريون يا عيسى ابن مريم هل يستطيع ربك أن ينزل علينا مائدة من السماء قال اتقوا الله إن كنتم مؤمنين قالوا نريد أن نأكل منها وتطمئن قلوبنا ونعلم أن قد أنت قد صدقتنا ونكون عليها من الشاهدين. قال عيسى ابن مريم اللهم ربنا أنزل علينا مائدة من السماء تكون لنا عيدا لأولنا وآخرنا وآيات منك وارزقنا وأنت خير الرازقين. قال الله إني منزله قال الله إني منزلها عليكم فمن يكفر بعد منكم فإني أعذبه عذابا لا أعذبه أحد من العالمين. وإذ قال الله يا عيسى ابن مريم أنت قلت للناس اتخذوني وأمي إلهين من دون الله قال سبحانك ما يكون لي أن أقول ما ليس لي بحق إن كنت قلته فقد علمت تعلم ما في نفسي ولا أعلم ما في نفسك إنك أنت علام الغيوب. ما قلت لهم إلا ما أمرتني به أن اعبدوا الله ربي ورباكم وكنت عليهم شهيدا ما دمت فيهم فلما توفيتني كنت أنت الرقيب عليهم وأنت على كل شيء شهيد. إن تعذبهم فإنهم عبادك وإن تغفر لهم فإنك أنت العزيز الحكيم. قال الله هذا يوم ينفع الصادقين صدقهم لهم جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها أبدا رضي الله عنهم ورضوا عنه ذلك الفوز العظيم. لله ملك السماوات والأرض وما فيهن وهو على كل شيء قدير. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
एक और रुकू पढ़ें बिस्मिल्लाह।
बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम अल्हम्दुलिल्लाहिल्लज़ी खलक़स-समावाति वल-अर्द वजअलज़-ज़ुलुमाति वन-नूर थुम्मल्लज़ीना कफ़रू बिरब्बिहिम यादिलून वल्लज़ी खलक़कुम मिन तीनिन थुम्मा क़दा अजला व अजलुम मुसम्मन इंदहु थुम्मा अंतुम तमतरून व हुवल्लाहु फ़िस-समावाति व फ़िल-अर्द यअलमु सिर्रकुम व जहरकुम व यअलमु मा तक़सिमून वमा ताअतीहिम मिन आयाति रब्बिहिम इल्ला
मिन आयतिन पहली
वमा
दफा
ताअतीहिम मिन
आया
आयाति रब्बिहिम
नहीं the difference is the first one is a single ayah, the second is the plural. min ayatin min ayati, so ayah is a single and ayat is the plural.
وما تأتيهم من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين فقد كذبوا بالحق لما جاءهم فسوف يأتيهم أنباء ما كانوا به يستهزئون ألم يروا كم أهلكنا من قبلهم من قرن مكناهم في الأرض ما لم نمكن لكم وأرسلنا السماء عليهم مدرارا وجعلنا الأنهار تجري من تحتهم فأهلكناهم بذنوبهم وأنشأنا من بعدهم قرنا آخرين ولنزلنا عليك كتابا في قرطاس فلمسوه بأيديهم لقال الذين كفروا إن هذا إلا سحر مبين وقالوا لولا أنزل عليه ملك ولو أنزلنا ملكا لقضي الأمر ثم لا ينذرون ولو جعلناه ملكا ولو جعلناه ملكا لجعلناه رجلا وللبسنا عليهم ما يلبسون ولقد استهزئ برسل من قبلك فحاق بالذين سخروا منهم ما كانوا به يستهزئون قل سيروا في الأرض ثم انظروا كيف كان عاقبة المكذبين قل لمن ما في السماوات والأرض قل الله كتب على نفسه الرحمة الله ليجمعنكم إلى يوم القيامة لا ريب فيه الذين خاسروا أنفسهم فهم لا يؤمنون وله ما سكن في الليل والنهار وهو السميع العليم قل أغير الله أتخذ وليا فاطر السماوات والأرض وهو يطعم ولا يطعم قل إني أمرت أن أكون أول من أسلم ولا تكونن من المشركين قل إني أخاف إن عصيت ربي عذاب يوم عظيم من يصرف عنه يومئذ فقد رحمه وذلك الفوز المبين وإن يمسسك الله بضر فلا كاشف له إلا هو وإن يمسسك بخير فهو على كل شيء قدير وهو القاهر فوق عباده وهو الحكيم الخبير قل أي شيء أكبر شهادة قل الله فشهيد بيني وبينكم وأوحي إلي هذا القرآن لأنذركم به ومن بلغ أئنكم لتشهدون أن مع الله آلهة أخرى قل لا أشهد قل إنما هو إله واحد وإنني بريء مما تشركون الذين آتيناهم الكتاب يعرفونه كما يعرفون أبناءهم الذين خاسروا أنفسهم فهم لا يؤمنون صدق الله العلي العظيم.
بسم الله. هذا بقى.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ومن أظلم ممن افترى على الله كذبا أو كذب بآياته إنه لا يفلح الظالمون ويوم نحشرهم جميعا ثم نقول للذين أشركوا أين شركاؤكم الذين كنتم تزعمون ثم لم تكن فتنتهم إلا أن قالوا والله ربنا ما كنا مشركين انظر كيف كذبوا على أنفسهم وضل عنهم ما كانوا يفترون ومنهم من يستمع إليك وجعلنا على قلوبهم أكنة أن يفقهوه وفي آذانهم وقرا وإن يروا كل آية لا يؤمنوا بها حتى إذا جاءوك يجادلونك يقول الذين كفروا إن هذا إلا أساطير الأولين وهم ينهون عنه وينأون عنه وإن يهلكون إلا أنفسهم وما يشعرون ولو ترى إذ وقفوا على النار فقالوا يا ليتنا نرد ولا نكذب بآياتنا ربنا ونكون من المؤمنين بل بدا لهم ما كانوا يخفون من قبل ولو ردوا لعادوا لما نهوا عنه وإنهم لكاذبون وقالوا إن هي إلا حياتنا الدنيا وما نحن بمبعوثين ولو ترى إذ وقفوا على ربهم قال أليس هذا بالحق قالوا بلى وربنا قال فذوقوا العذاب بما كنتم تكفرون قد خسر الذين كذبوا بلقاء الله حتى إذا جاءتهم الساعة بغتة قالوا يا حسرتنا على ما فرطنا فيها وهم يحملون أوزارهم على ظهورهم ألا ساء ما يزرون وما الحياة الدنيا إلا لعب ولهو وللدار الآخرة خير للذين يتقون أفلا تعقلون قد نعلم إنه ليحزنك الذي يقولون فإنهم لا يكذبونك ولكن الظالمين بآيات الله يجحدون ولقد كذبت رسل من قبلك فصبروا على ما كذبوا وأوذوا حتى أتاهم نصرنا ولا مبدل لكلمات الله ولقد جاءك من نبأ المرسلين وإن كان كبر عليك إعراضهم فإن استطعت أن تبتغي نفقا في الأرض أو سلما في السماء فتأتيهم بآية ولو شاء الله لجمعهم على الهدى فلا تكونن من الجاهلين إنما يستجيب الذين يسمعون والموتى يبعثهم الله ثم إليه يرجعون وقالوا لولا نزل عليه آية من ربه قل إن الله قادر على أن ينزل آية ولكن أكثرهم لا يعلمون وما من دابة في الأرض ولا طائر يطير بجناحيه إلا أمثالكم ما فرطنا في الكتاب من شيء ثم إلى ربهم يحشرون والذين كذبوا بآياتنا صم وبكم في الظلمات من يشاء الله فيضلله ومن يشاء يجعله على صراط مستقيم قل أرأيتكم إن أتاكم عذاب الله أو أتتكم الساعة أغير الله تدعون إن كنتم صادقين بل إياه تدعون فيكشف ما تدعون إليه إن شاء وتنسون ما تشركون صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Ahsantum, jazakumullah. Ali, you wanted to read a little bit?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. وَلَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا إِلَى مِن قَبْلِكَ فَأَخَذْنَاهُمْ بِالْبَأْسَاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَضَرَّعُونَ فَلَوْلَا إِذْ جَاءَهُمْ بَأْسُنَا تضرعوا ولكن فست قلوبهم وزين لهم الشيطان ما كانوا يعملون فلما نسوا ما ذكروا به فتحنا عليهم أبواب كل شيء حتى إذا فرحوا بما أوتوا أخذناهم بغتة فإذا هم مبلسون فقطع دابر القوم الذين ظلموا والحمد لله رب العالمين قل أرأيتم إن أخذ الله سمعكم وأبصاركم وختم على قلوبكم من إله غير الله يأتيكم به انظر كيف نصرف الآيات ثم هم يصدفون قل أرأيتكم إن أتاكم عذاب الله بغتة أو جهرة هل يهلك إلا القوم الظالمون وما نرسل المرسلين إلا مبشرين منذرين فمن آمن وأصلح فلا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون والذين كذبوا بآياتنا يمسهم العذاب بما كانوا يفسقون قل لا أقول لكم عندي خزائن الله ولا أعلم الغيب ولا أقول لكم إني ملك إن أتبع إلا ما يوحى إلي قل هل يستوي الأعمى والبصير أفلا تتفكرون صدق الله العظيم.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وأنذر به الذين يخافون أن يحشروا إلى ربهم ليس لهم من دونه ولي ولا شفيع لعلهم يتقون. ولا تطرد الذين يدعون ربهم بالغداوة والعشي يريدون وجهه ما عليك من حسابهم من شيء وما من حسابك عليهم من شيء فتطردهم فتكون من الظالمين. وكذلك فتن بعضهم ببعض ليقولوا أهؤلاء من الله عليهم من بيننا أليس الله بعالم بالشاكرين. وإذا جاءك الذين يؤمنون بآياتنا فقل سلام عليكم كتب ربكم على نفسه الرحمة أنه من عمل منكم سوءا بجهالة ثم يتاب من بعده وأصلح فأنه غفور رحيم. وكذلك نفصل الآيات لتستبين سبيل المجرمين. صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept the recitation from all of those who took part, and may Allah give you the reward of every ayat and every verse that you recited, inshallah, in the form of a house in paradise. And also those who are taking part in listening, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you thawab of listening to the words of Quran in this holy month of Ramadan. Very quickly, inshallah, in the next 4 or 5 minutes, I'll go over the gist of this juz number 7 from the Holy Quran, which we recited today. This section of the Quran has 2 main parts. The first is the remainder of Surah Ma'idah, and the remaining is the start of Surah An'am. So we did start Surah An'am, and we did recite a little bit of it. In the remaining part of Surah Ma'idah, which is the 5th chapter of Quran, there are 4 main discussions that were discussed. First is the introduction of the Christians of Abyssinia. Remember the story of how the first migration took place, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's orders to Rasul to send Muslims under the leadership of Ja'far Tayyar to Abyssinia. There's a Christian king who will take you under his protection, and you'll be safeguarded. Second discussion is the common authority refuted and point about manners. Third is a few rules about halal and haram, and fourth is the day of judgment and a mention of Prophet Isa. The introduction of the Christians of Abyssinia, when the Quran is recited in front of their eyes became full of tears. And in fact, when their king asked when he heard such stories of the names of the biblical characters, right away he was interested in knowing, although he was friend with the Quraysh and the Mushrikeen of Makkah, but he was interested in knowing what Muslims had to say. And when he heard these noble names of Hazrat Isa and Bibi Maryam, although Mushrikeen tried to infuriate or incite him by saying that they don't believe in Jesus being Son of God. They believe that he was merely a prophet. So he said, okay, let me hear what else you have to say. So this is where Hazrat Ja'far Tayyar, who recited the portions of Surah Maryam and the miraculous birth of Prophet Isa, which then brought tears into their eyes. And of course, that led to them giving refuge to the Muslims to remain in Abyssinia as long as they wished to, and did not turn them over to the Mushrikeen of Makkah. Second discussion is a common authority refuted and point about manners. To be part of a majority, no matter who, is not a sign of being right. So Surah Ma'idah ayat number 109 says, on the day when Allah will assemble the messengers, then say, what answer were you given? They shall say, we have no knowledge. Surely you are the great knower of the unseen things. Explains how one should be subservient to Allah through the example of the prophets, that when prophets are making such a when Allah is asking them, and in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they're saying, we have nothing more to offer than what you have given to us. So just imagine what our situation would be. Well, the fact of the matter is, prophets definitely possess more knowledge than any human can ever do. So this shows, excuse me, this shows the importance of how we should not take pride in the knowledge that we might have. Third is the few rules about halal and haram that are mentioned in it. Don't decide for yourself what is halal and what is haram. Asceticism, to leave worldly desires, has been negated in Islam. While some people might argue that isn't that against zuhud and asceticism? Yeah, but not while you have left the world and or you have left the worldly desires completely and made them haram upon you. No, that has been negated in Islam. Allah wants you to enjoy that things which are halal for you, the portion which is your nasib, but not completely getting rid of it. A foolish oath is not held accountable by Allah. However, one who takes a false oath must pay a kafara for this action. So just like there's kafara of breaking the fast, there's a kafara of breaking an oath as well, meaning feeding 10 people. How when you break a fast, the kafara of feeding 60 people, the kafara for breaking an oath is a little bit less, meaning feeding 10 people 2 meals each, or giving them clothing, or freeing a slave. If none of these can be done, then of course a person can just fast for 3 days, and that will be the kafara and the expiation of his breaking the oath. Allah continues that alcohol, gambling, worshipping idols, and divining arrows are all haram. The ayah says, إنما الخمر والميسر والأزلام والأنساب, all of these are rijsun min amal ash-shaytan fajtanibuhu. For a person in ihram, hunting is forbidden while fishing is allowed. So the law is mentioned. The haram is a place, or rather the haram where he's wearing this ihram is a place of sanctuary for all who enter. The polytheists would forbid animals from their pagan customs. Allah removed these restrictions. They said, no, those could be brought in. Last discussion in Surah Ma'idah, the day of judgment and a mention of Hazrat Isa. On the day of judgment, the prophets will be asked when they are presented, or when they presented the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the people, what answer were they given? In this series of questions, Allah will ask Prophet Isa, or rather Hazrat Isa will be asked to recount the favors that Allah had bestowed upon him. And of course, he will go ahead and count. Among these favors is sending him, from heaven, a table of food. I remember the dua that he made, Allahumma Rabbana anzil alayna ma'idatan. So send a table full of food at the request of his disciples. Upon recounting these favors, Allah will ask Prophet Isa, that, did you tell them to call you and your mother God? Prophet Isa will swear, and he said, I only invited people to worship Allah and had done nothing more than that. If in fact I had done that, you would be the first one to find out. Second portion is about Surah An'am. We did not finish the entire surah, so I'll just quickly go over the four main points in it. Tawheed is mentioned. The surah elaborates points of Allah's greatness and might. Messengership, the Holy Prophet being sent as a human, opposed to Allah sending an angel, is explained, and that message is for all people of the world. Allah mentions the name of 18 prophets in the surah. A mention is also made as well to Azar as the father of Prophet Ibrahim, though father of Ibrahim was Taruq. Here, father is used as a broader sense, because he was the guardian. In fact, he was the uncle of Hat Ibrahim. The Day of Judgment, following verses of Surah An'am give description of the Day of Judgment, verse 12, 16, 22, 27, and 32. And lastly, points of ethics and character. Being in places where Allah's signs are derided should be avoided, except for admonition's sake. Cursing and use of foul language has been forbidden, even for, if you were to use this against the enemies. This was just, again, a brief gist of what we discussed, or the portion of Quran that we have recited. At this point, I would go ahead and request Heather Bhai, I guess, reciting Surah Dua Iftitah. Bismillah.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أفتتح الثناء بحمدك وأنت مسدد للصواب بمنك، وأيقنت أنك أنت أرحم الراحمين في موضع العفو والرحمة، وأشد المعاقبين في موضع النكال والنقمة، وأعظم المتجبرين في موضع الكبرياء والعظمة. اللهم أذنت لي في دعائك ومسألتك، فاسمع يا سميع مدحتي، وأجب يا رحيم دعوتي، وأقل يا غفور عثرتي. فكم يا إلهي من كربة قد فرجتها، وهموم قد كشفتها، وعثرة قد أقلتها، ورحمة قد نشرتها، وحلقة بلاء قد فككتها. الحمد لله الذي لم يتخذ صاحبة ولا ولدا، ولم يكن له شريك في الملك، ولم يكن له ولي من الذل، وكبره تكبيرا. الحمد لله بجميع محامده كلها، على جميع نعمه كلها. الحمد لله الذي لا مضاد له في ملكه، ولا منازع له في أمره. الحمد لله الذي لا شريك له في خلقه، ولا شبيه له في عظمته. الحمد لله الفاشي في الخلق أمره وحمده، الظاهر بالكرم مجده، الباسط بالجود يداه، الذي لا تنقص خزائنه ولا تزيده كثرة العطاء إلا جودا وكرما. إنه هو العزيز الوهاب. اللهم إني أسألك قليلا من كثير، مع حاجة بي إليه عظيمة، وغناك عنه قديم، وهو عندي كثير، وهو عليك سهل يسير. اللهم إن عفوك عن ذنبي، وتجاوزك عن خطيئتي، وسفحك عن ظلمي، وسترك على قبيح عملي، وحلمك عن كثير جرمي عندما كان من خطئي وعمدي، أطمعني في أن أسألك ما لا أستوجبه منك الذي رزقني من رحمتك وأريتني من قدرتك وعرفتني من إجابتك فصرت أدعوك آمنا وأسألك مستأنسا لا خائفا ولا وجلا مدلا عليك فيما قصدت فيه إليك فإن أبطأ عني عتبت بجهلي عليك ولعل الذي أبطأ عني هو خير لي لعلمك بعاقبة الأمور فلم أر مولا كريما أصبر على عبد لئيم منك علي يا رب إنك تدعوني فأولي عنك وتتحبب إلي فأتبغض إليك وتتودد إلي فلا أقبل منك وكأن لي يتطول إليك فلم يمنعك ذلك من الرحمة لي والإحسان إلي والتفضل علي بجودك وكرمك فارحم عبدك الجاهل وجد عليه بفضل إحسانك إنك جواد كريم الحمد لله مالك الملك مجري الفلك مسخر الرياح فالق الإصباح ديان الدين رب العالمين الحمد لله على حلمه بعد علمه والحمد لله على عفوه بعد قدرته والحمد لله على طول أناته في غضبه وهو قادر على ما يريد الحمد لله خالق الخلق باسط الرزق فالق الإصباح بالجلال والإكرام والفضل والإنعام الذي بعد فلا يرى وقرب فشهد النجوى تبارك وتعالى الحمد لله الذي ليس له منازع يعادله ولا شبيه يشاكله ولا ظهير يعاضده قهر بعزته الأعزاء وتواضع لعزمته العزماء فبلغ من قدرته ما يشاء الحمد لله الذي يجيبني حين أناديه ويستر علي كل عورة وأنا أعصيه ويعزم النعمة علي فلا أجازيه فكم من موهبة هنيئة قد أعطاني وعزيمة مخوفة قد كفاني وبهجة مونقة قد أغاني وأثني عليه حامدا وأذكره مسبحا الحمد لله الذي لا يهتك حجابه ولا يغلق بابه ولا يرد سائله ولا يخيب آمله الحمد لله الذي يؤمن الخائفين وينجي الصالحين ويرفع المستضعفين ويضع المستكبرين ويهلك ملوكا ويستخلف آخرين والحمد لله قاسم الجبارين مبين الظالمين مدرك الهاربين نقال الظالمين صريخ المستصرخين موضع حاجات الطالبين معتمد المؤمنين الحمد لله الذي من خشيته ترحل السماء وسكانها وترجف الأرض وعمارها وتموج البحار ومن يسبح في غمراتها الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله الحمد لله الذي يخلق ولم يخلق ويرزق ولا يرزق ويدعم ولا يدعم ويميت الأحياء ويحيي الموتى وهو حي لا يموت بيده الخير وهو على كل شيء قدير اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ورسولك وأمينك وصفيك وحبيبك وخيرتك من خلقك وحافظ سرك ومبلغ رسالاتك أفضل وأحسن وأجمل وأكمل وأزكى وأنمى وأطيب وأظهر وأسنى وأكثر ما صليت وباركت وترحمت وتحننت وسلمت على أحد من عبادك وأنبيائك ورسلك وصفتك وأهل الكرامة عليك من خلقك. اللهم وصل على علي أمير المؤمنين ووصي رسول رب العالمين، عبدك ووليك وأخي رسولك وحجتك على خلقك وآيتك الكبرى والنبأ العظيم. وصل على الصديقة الطاهرة فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين. وصل على سبطي الرحمة وإمامي الهدى الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة. وصل على أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والخلف الهادي المهدي، حججك على عبادك وأمنائك في بلادك صلاة كثيرة دائمة. اللهم وصل على ولي أمرك القائم المؤمل والعدل المنتظر وحفه بملائكتك المقربين وأيده بروح القدس يا رب العالمين. اللهم اجعله الداعي إلى كتابك والقائم بدينك. استخلف في الأرض كما استخلفت الذين من قبله، مكن له دينه الذي ارتضيته له، أبدله من بعده خوفه أمنا، يعبدك لا يشرك بك شيئا. اللهم أعزه وأعزز به وانصره وانتصر به وانصره نصرا عزيزا وافتح له فتحا يسيرا واجعل له من لدنك سلطانا نصيرا. اللهم أظهر به دينك وسنة نبيك حتى لا يستخفي بشيء من الحق مخافة أحد من الخلق. اللهم إنا نرغم إليك في دولة كريمة تعز بها الإسلام وأهله وتذل بها النفاق وأهله وتجعلنا فيها من الدعاة إلى طاعتك والقادة إلى سبيلك وترزقنا بها كرامة الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم ما عرفتنا من الحق فحملنا وما قصرنا عنه فبلغنا. اللهم المم به شعثنا واشعب به صدعنا وارتق به فتقنا وكثر به قلتنا وأعزز به ذلتنا وأغن به عائلنا واقض به عن مغرمنا واجبر به فقرنا وسد به خلتنا ويسر به عسرنا وبيض به وجوهنا وفك به أسرنا وأنجح به طلبتنا وأنجز به مواعيدنا واستجب به دعوتنا واعطنا به سؤلنا وبلغنا به من الدنيا والآخرة آمالنا واعطنا به فوق رغبتنا يا خير المسؤولين وأوسع المعطين. اشف به صدورنا وأذهب به غيظ قلوبنا واهدنا به لما اختلف فيه من الحق بإذنك إنك تهدي من تشاء إلى صراط مستقيم. وانصرنا به على عدوك وعدونا إله الحق آمين. اللهم إنا نشكو إليك في فقد نبينا صلواتك عليه وآله وغيبة ولينا وكثرة عدونا وقلة عددنا وشدة الفتن بنا وتظاهر الزمان علينا. فصل على محمد وآله وعنا على ذلك بفتح منك تعجله وبضر تكشفه ونصر تعزه وسلطان حق تظهره ورحمة منك تجللناها وعافية منك تلبسناها برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم.
لأرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات فاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم صلى الله على محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين أبي القاسم محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. Amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. On the 7th day of the month of Ramadan, inshallah, we will start our discussion on the 7th dua, which is recommended to be recited amongst the recommendations of the Holy Prophet Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wasallam. And on this day, the dua that he recommended, for which he mentioned fadail and thawab, is as follows. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma a'inni fihi ala siyamihi wa qiyamih wa jannibni fihi min hafawatihi wa athamih warzuqni fihi dhikraka bidawamih bitawfiqika ya hadiyal mudillin. These are the words of Rasulullah on this dua number 7. It says, "O Allah, on this day, help me." Let's pull it out. "O Allah, on this day, help me with its fast and prayers," or in observing the fast and the prayers. "And keep me away from mistakes and sins of this day. Grant me that I remember you continuously through the day by your assistance, O the guide of those who stray." We find that there are 3 main discussions that could be found in this dua. The first discussion is seeking assistance from Allah in performing the ibadat such as the salat and the sawm. While these actions are obligatory, still it requires fulfillment of these actions requires that we get assistance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Second is refraining from the slippage of our tongue, or laghzish zabani, as we said, and to utter things which are not to be uttered from our tongue. And that's why we made this, so Allah keep me away on this day from slips and sins. Slips usually is referring to that which is slipping out of the tongue. And lastly, to always stay busy in doing the dhikr of Allah. Bitawfiqika ya hadi al-mudallin. Out of your guidance, out of your help, O the one who guides even those who are the misled ones. So the first discussion is something which we have talked about a great deal, seeking assistance from Allah in performing the ibadat of Psalm and Salat. There's enough discussion that we've had that I don't feel that we go into this more. But of course, while it being an obligation upon us, a lot of time there needs to be incentive. And on numerous occasions, doesn't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mention in Quran the incentives that He has given to mankind if they were to act in accordance with His will. To some, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given the incentive of paradise and things that exist in paradise. And even incentives are given in this worldly life. That's what you find in the kalam of Masumin. Smallest of the actions that are done in the month of Ramadan how the multiplication of the reward. And some of the rewards are given in this world. The compensation is given in this world. So with all of these incentives, of course, that makes it more, gives us more of a chance to go ahead and perform these ibadat. And a lot of time, these incentives might work for older people, but people will come to us and say, Maulana, our kids, they don't pray, they don't fast. No incentive will work for them, right? The incentives are, a lot of time, majority of time, are for the hereafter. And when that's the case, you need to have belief in the unseen. And so, well, sometimes kids might not buy into that. So what do? Well, you can give them incentive in this world. As a parent, there's nothing wrong in giving them an incentive if they were to offer their prayers, if they were to go ahead and perform, although this action may be obligatory upon them, but they're struggling to perform this obligation, then giving them incentive so that they may go ahead and do it is not a bad idea, as long as it leads to them becoming, permanent reciters and worshipers. Now, if you feel that outcome might come out of it, it's good to start this habit when they are not baligh. So prior to them becoming baligh, you can start this, sort of incentive, giving them some maybe financial or monetary gains or other things, as far as there's so many things that kids would love these days if you were to give them ideas. Okay, for example, you can watch TV for an hour, for example, you can use gadget for an hour, you can do this for, you can go out and play with your friends. But just the same way we ask them to do certain things at home and we give them incentive, similar could be done when it comes to performance of ibadat. But to do it prior to it becoming wajib upon them, so that by the time it becomes wajib, with these incentives, you don't bankrupt yourself. And, eventually they will pick up and they'll understand that it is an obligation upon them. And they want to perform this wholeheartedly and not because you are going to go ahead and pay them for doing so. So that's as far as seeking assistance from Allah in performing this ibadat, Psalm and Salat is concerned. Similar could be done for, our kids. That's the second discussion, which would be the main discussion tonight, is how to protect from slippage of the tongue. I've had discussions about this on Friday sermons, but aside from those discussions, I think it's coupled in the month of Ramadan, that how during this month, while we are supposed to fast, but fast, we all know, is incomplete. It's just the mandatory things to avoid is to eat and drink. That breaks the fast. But in order to attain that highest prize, which is taqwa, which is piety, one must fast with their tongue, as well as with the ears, and as well as with their eyes. So in this understanding, Rasulullah said, Salamatul insani fi hifzil lisani. Bala'ul insani minal lisani. That the salamti and the soundness and the safety of insan lies where? In protection of his tongue. And similarly, he said, Bala'ul insani, the calamity of insan is with this tongue. So the safety of insan is protecting this tongue, and the calamity of insan, humans, is with this tongue. Amir al-Mu'mineen also elaborated on this point further by saying, Al-lisanu saburun in khulliya anhu aqar. That tongue is like a beast, that fierce animal that eats anything or everything, devours anything. He said a tongue is like a beast. If it's left unattended, or if it's let loose, then of course it will cause damage. So when Rasulullah is making this dua, and he says, وَجَنِّبْنِي فِيهِ مِنْ حَفَوَاتِهِ وَأَعْثَامِهِ, and keep me away on this day from slippage. Literally, he's not talking about slipping of the tongue, but he's talking about, any sort of lapse, any sort of mistake. But we find the majority of the mistakes of Ibn Adam, us, are through our tongues. So what corrupts the tongue? Scholars of ethics say that there is a cause of corruption for everything. Everything can be corrupted. The tongue is no exception to this law. Many things will corrupt it, and there are numerous elements that could provide that corruption for the tongue. And nearly 20 causes have been cited for the corruption of the tongue. We'll mention a few over here. Number one that they mention is talking in vain. Talking in vain will only waste our time, and one of the causes of corruption of time. Now this, all of this discussion, one should not take it in a sense, oh, here they go again. Islam puts so many restrictions. What's wrong in having a good time? Nothing wrong. As long as the discussions are of halal nature. The moment discussions become of haram nature, then of course, this is what talking in vain becomes. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Man min husni Islam al-mar'i tarkuhu ma la yu'nih." One of the signs of the excellence of a Muslim's submission to God's will is his leaving what does not concern him. A lot of time people have, a great deal of time in their possession, and they can do a lot with their tongue. In fact, if you see that one of the main duties of the head of estates is what? Aside from running the country, is that they have to speak a lot. They have to give a lot of speeches, and they're on daily basis, they are giving talks, briefings, visiting places. If it's not official business, it's unofficial business where they're speaking at a gathering, at a fundraiser, at a gala, whatever. These are, one of the duties of the head of the states. You hear them all the time when they're speaking to their nation, whether they're speaking to their own staff and whatnot. So you can use this tongue to construct. Similarly, a lot of the scholars, one of their main duties is also to speak, also to give lectures. So this tongue can definitely be used in providing and guiding people and shaping the society. Prophet also said, the greatest in sins on resurrection day, on the day of Qiyamah, are those who have delved the most into wrong, khawdan bil batil, meaning ayat of Quran also talks about, then he referred to the Quran, where those who have gone to hell, they would say, what was one of the reasons that you ended up? Ma salakakum fi saqar. So first reason that they mentioned, the reason that I ended up in saqar is lam naku min al musallin. I did not used to pray. Then he says, wa kunna nakhudu ma'al khaidin. We used to gossip along the gossipers. That is one of the reasons that led us to the hellfire. And Salman Farsi, in similar words, added to what Rasulullah said, Aktharun nas dunuban yawm al-qiyamah aktharuhum kalaman fi ma'siyatillah. The most sinful of people on the day of judgment are those who have spoken the most in disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, in disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not mean that you're, na'udhu billah, addressing kufr or the ideas of disbelief, or you're spreading polytheism, or you're spreading hypocrisy. No, that's not what it means over here, disobedience to God. Disobedience to God is your regular conversation which carry slandering, which carries lies, which carries backbiting, as mentioned in these two traditions, or anything that would be ma'asiyat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's number one, which is mentioned by the ulama akhlaq, is talking in vain. Number two is excessive talking. Prophet said, Tuba liman amsak al-fadla min lisanihi wa atlaq al-fadla min malihi. Blessed be the one who restrains his tongue from excessive speech and gives his excess wealth in charity to the needy. You want excess, right? Use excess wealth. I guess from this you can derive that saying, put your money where your mouth is, right? That Prophet is saying, blessed is the one who restrains his tongue from excessive speech, excessive usage. They don't talk much. Talk the talk, walk the walk, right? They present with their wealth. Here you go. I'm spending this in charity and I'm helping the people. And then people will be just arousing others to do good, which is a good thing. But they themselves will not do anything, will not contribute anything, but they'll speak a great deal about it. But those who, a prophet said, instead of using excessive speech, use excess of wealth and charity. Therefore, the more one speaks, more he or she is prone to saying something wrong and making a mistake. Thus the dua of Rasulullah, in which he said, "O Allah, I ask forgiveness or seek your assistance and tawfiq from the slipping and the lapses and sinning on this day." Third is arguing. Arguing and teasing are factors that corrupt the tongue. Islam has ordered us not to argue, since it is blameworthy. The noble prophet said, "La tumari akhaka wa la tumarikhu wa la ta'idhu maw'idan fatukhlifuhu." He said, "La tumari akhaka wa la tumazihhu wa la ta'idhu maw'idan fatukhlifuhu." Do not argue with, tease, or break the promise you have made with your brothers. Because when you break a promise, that also goes under the awfu bil uqud, or the wafa, being loyal and fulfilling the ahad, or the ahad meaning the contracts or promises, and aqd, uqud, meaning the contracts. So don't break them. Make sure that you fulfill them. La yastakmilu abdun, a servant cannot attain full faith unless he or she quits verbal arguments, even if he is right. So a lot of time our arguments might be right, but if it's not going to lead, and we know that it'll only end up being a discussion where a lot of hearts are broken and nothing good comes out of it. Prophet said, a servant cannot attain full faith unless he quits verbal arguments, even if he is right. So whoever knows that he is right, but quits arguing, that's a big deal, right? You know that you're on haqq, but you quit. You say, well, I rest my case. This does not mean that you feel defeated. It says, whoever knows that they're right, but quits arguing shall be given a residence in a high heavenly place. Whoever knows that he is wrong and quits arguing shall be given a residence in a low heavenly place. Nonetheless, both end up in heaven. I was wrong, but I was continue to argue. Is that, well, if you stop first, because either one of the two parties stops, quits, will end the argument. And therefore, that is what is being asked over here. But if you must argue, now there are certain places where you can't resist, not just you can't resist, that you must argue to stand up for the right of those who are being oppressed. So if you must argue, then act as Quran has demanded. Jadilhum billati hiya ahsan. Speak to them in a form which is ahsan, which is good. So it does not show hatred or animosity. Fourth thing which becomes the reason for the corruption is verbal abuse or expression of animosity to get one's right or property is another factor that corrupts the tongue. Prophet of Allah said, "Man jadala fi khusumatin bighayri ilmin lam yazal fi sakhatillahi hatta yanzal." Whoever argues in a dispute without true knowledge shall remain subject to God's wrath until he desists. So there are rooms in heaven. A lot of time what happens is that we do things and we say, well, nobody really saw it, which then may make us do this thing again so that we can get the appreciation from the people. Prophet said, "Inna fil jannati la ghurafan yura zahiruha min batiniha." There are rooms in heaven, the exterior of which can be seen from their interior, and the interior of which is visible from their exterior. I'm sure we have seen rooms such as that here as well. There's a mirror. Sometimes it's a two-way mirror. Sometimes it's only one way, where you can see through it, or sometimes you see your own reflection in it. People from outside can see in it. God has prepared them for those who feed the hungry ones and are pleasant in speech. Why? What's the purpose behind it? They say, even if our actions go unnoticed here, we do some actions and our intention was sincere, but still we wanted some appreciation from the onlookers. We didn't get that appreciation. Nobody really noticed it. So even if your actions go unnoticed here, these rooms where interior is visible and the purpose behind it is that people will immediately know who is in these rooms. It will be a matter of pride for anyone who is in them. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has constructed them for such individuals. Thus, Prophet instructs all Muslims to be polite in speech and not use bad or obscene language. Muslims are instructed to attract other people's love, friendship by using good words. So a lot of time when we are saying things, we are uttering things, we say, well, nobody's really watching. Nobody really sees. Urdu mein kahawat hai, diwaron ke bhi kaan hote hain. I guess it's so true that today, all these devices that we have in our homes, we have fit the cameras for surveillance in our houses. We put Google and Siri and Alexa in charge of, turning on and off our lights. They're listening to us all the time. So nothing that you say would really be protected. And we're basically buying into all of these things so that, we're putting this information in their hand. To make our lives easy, if nothing to hide, that's fine. But this is again where privacy issue comes in. So I'll skip this and go to the next one, which is swearing. Swearing is considered forbidden in Islam, and it is also one of the causes that corrupts, or factors that corrupts the tongue. Prophet said, Al-Jannatu haramun ala kulli fahishin an yadkhulaha. Heaven is forbidden upon the one who curses, swears. He cannot enter it. Swearing is defined to be the expression of vulgar things. One who swears is trying to hurt the other party, and hurting others is certainly forbidden. And we'll mention these psychological reasons behind it. It may be the result of associating with bad company, those who constantly use obscene language. This has also been declared bad in Islam, to avoid the company of those who are bad. Why? Because if you can't change them, then they'll definitely have effect on you. So it's better that you avoid their company altogether. An Arab went to see the Prophet, and he said to him, please give me some advice. Prophet said, alayka bi taqwallah wa nimru'un ayyaraka bi shay'in ya'lamuhu minka fala tu'ayyirhu bi shay'in ta'lamu fihi yakun wabaluhu alayhi ajruhu lak. He said, wala tasubbanna shay'an min khalqillah. I advise you to fear God. If someone blames you for what is in you, do not blame him for what you know that may lie in him. So if someone knows, something about me, which is, true, and I also know something about that person, so they go ahead and use that and reveal that about me. Prophet said, if someone blames you for something that is in you, do not blame him for what you know about that person that lies in him. Thus, he will suffer from the ill consequences of his deeds, and you will prosper from your good deeds, and also never insult any of God's creatures. This was said actually in a broader, sphere perspective. Never insult any of God's creatures. And this, of course, could definitely mean humans that Allah has created, but even beyond humans. The man took the Prophet's advice, and he never swore at anyone. We learn from this tradition that, we should never use our knowledge of others' weaknesses to harm their honor. Ayaz ibn Samar told Rasulullah that, O Prophet, a relative of mine who is lower than me in rank swears at me. Lower than me in rank meaning, how the relations are, father versus the son, uncle versus the nephew, for example, older brother to older or to the younger brother, to the younger siblings. And from that aspect, he said, he's lower than me in rank, but he swears at me. Should I swear at him in defense? Rasulullah said, Al-mutasabban shaytanan yata'awanani wa yatahataran. He said, whenever two people revile, insult each other, they're like two shaitans working together in disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by making false accusations against each other. So sometimes there are things that are in you. And of course, you're reminded of that story of fifth Imam Muhammad Baqir, a person from another town came and, made fun of Imam's name. It did not bother Imam a bit. Imam responded and corrected him that my name is this. He saw that he can't get under Imam's skin. He associated an act with Imam's mother. And to that, Imam responded, if what you're saying my mother is, then may Allah forgive her. But if what you're saying is wrong and you're associating, a tuhmat, a blame against her which she does not have, then I ask Allah to forgive you for slandering her. That right away was an eye opener for that man. He repented. He said, I was just trying to get under your skin because that's how I was taught to speak to Ahlul Bayt. But you are, completely different from what I was taught. So these are 5 things. Number 6 is cursing, which is close to swearing, is also another factor that corrupts the tongue. Whoever curses others is pushing them away from the circle of God's mercy. This issue has been referred to in several verses of Quran. God has cursed many and has deprived them of his mercy. So different from swear was foul language. Curse is sending la'anat upon them, right? An important case is of that shaitan that Allah said in chapter 38, verse 78, وَإِنَّ عَلَيْكَ لَعَنَتِي إِلَى يَوْمِ الدِّينِ. And indeed, my curse be on you until the day of retribution. So a group of people aside from shaitan who are cursed in Quran, those who conceal the truth are also cursed. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَكْتُمُونَ مَا أَنزَلْنَا مِنَ الْبَيِّنَاتِ وَالْهُدَى مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا بَيَّنَّاهُ لِلنَّاسِ فِي الْكِتَابِ أُولَٰئِكَ يَلْعَنُهُمُ اللَّهُ وَيَلْعَنُهُمُ اللَّاعِنُونَ. Those who conceal what has been sent down as manifest proof. So there were people, from the Christians and the Jews community and even those polytheists of Mecca, that after seeing what has come down, they would conceal the proofs and the guidance. After we clarified it for them, they shall be cursed by Allah and accursed by those who curse. So those who break ties with family are also subject to the la'anat Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends. So these are 3 different groups of people that Quran sends la'anat upon them. La'anat meaning taking the mercy of Allah away. But then when it comes to mu'min, Prophet said, al-mu'minu laysa bil-la'anin. Believer does not curse others. It is even forbidden to curse animals in Islam. Overall, we can conclude that cursing men, animals, and objects is forbidden, except for some instances of the infidels and the hypocrites who usurp the rights of Masumin and his descendants. That's where the exception may come in. I'll skip some of these as I'm running out of my time. Some of the things that corrupt the tongue is always joking around. I know having a good laugh is not forbidden in Islam, but joking around constantly is considered something which a person should. In fact, even generally speaking, those who are known for constant humor and constantly joking around and making jokes all the time, people don't take their words seriously. So that itself tells you, because if a person always jokes around, his words will not be taken seriously. Prophet said, "La tumari akhaka wa la tumazirhu." Similar tradition that we used before. He said, "Inni la amzahu wa la aqulu illa haqqan." I tell jokes, Prophet said, but only say the truth. So a Prophet's joke was what? Prophet told some, very nice jokes. As an example, consider the following. 1 day, an old lady went to see the Prophet. Prophet said, An old lady does not go to heaven. Elderly will not enter heaven. The old lady started crying, said, what is going to happen to me? The Prophet said, on that day, you will not be old. You will become young. So these were sort of like the jokes that are associated with Rasulullah. And then he said the following about, about this fact from Quran. Inna ansha'nahunna insha'an faja'alnahunna abkara. We have created them with a special creation and made them pure and undefiled. So referring to that, how people will be, especially the women, are being feminine gender is being mentioned over here, referring to them being, youth again when they grow up. And that's why some of the traditions that were ja'ali and fabricated were based on the true and sahih traditions, like the tradition which says, Al-Hasan wal-Hussein Sayyida Shababi Ahl Jannah, that Hassan and Hussein are the leaders of the youth of paradise. Contrary to that, you find a tradition in the books of Ahl Sunnah pretty much, which says the first Khalifa and the second Khalifa are the leaders of the Kuhulul Jannah. They are the leaders of the older people in Jannah, because they were old. And you can realize that how a person who was fabricating this hadith used the words of Al-Hasan wal Hussein Sayyida Shabab Ahl Jannah. These would be the Sayyida Kuhul Ahl Jannah. And so ayat of Quran refutes this idea that there aren't any elderly over there anyway. For someone to be the leader of the elderly, they'll become young. Number 9, making fun of others. Scholars in ethics have considered making fun of people as one of the factors that corrupts the tongue. Surah Hujurat is filled with it. I've spoken about it before. I'll just give you as a reference ayat number 11 of chapter 49, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "O you have faith, let not people ridicule one another. It may be that they're better than you. Let not women ridicule one another. Maybe that they're better than you." So don't defame one another. Don't insult one another by calling nicknames. How evil are profane names subsequent to faith. So this is chapter 49, verse number 11, which talks about someone who makes fun of others. The psychological motivation behind making fun of others, a form of inferiority complex, is considered to be a psychological root of making fun of others. When a person himself or herself feels lowly, then they'll go out and they'll make such statements. This is why respectable people never make fun of anyone. Those who make fun of others also enjoy insulting others. They have a sort of vicious attitude. Beasts attack the people physically, and these people attack the people's honor. Similar. In fact, that which is attacked through the tongue does not have any healing. If you're struck by a beast or attacked by a beast, if you survived, the wounds will go away. But the wounds that are cast by someone's tongue, they will never go away. There are other things, as I said, there were 20 factors. I've run out of my time. Divulging or exposing the secrets of other, fake promises, lying, and so on and so forth. These are some of the things that we derive from this kalam. Last thing of this dua, to always stay busy in doing the dhikr of Allah. I did not get to that. Inshallah, we will discuss this tomorrow in the beginning, before we get to the dua number 8 from the kalam of Rasulullah. Wa akhu da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. At the end, while we have a minute or two remaining before the Azan of Maghrib, I would like to once again recognize the sponsors for tonight's program, and the families of Dr. Asad and Amina Sadiq, Dr. And Mrs. Aziz Sadiq, and Dr. and Mrs. Zaki Sadiq. Please recite Surah Fatiha for their deceased relatives as well as yours. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Let's remember those people who are in need of dua by reciting this dua from Surah Namal together. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء 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 ويجعلكم خلفاء الأرض أإله مع الله قليلا ما تذكرون. Inshallah, let's listen to the Azan of Maghrib.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن علي